everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Andrea, and in today's video I would like to share with you my intended TBR for the month of October, specifically the challenges for Victober. If you don't know what Victober is, it's a readathon or reading challenge that's been happening for many years here on BookTube, where we read Victorian literature for the month of October. Now there are 4 hosts, and each one of them has set a challenge. The challenges just keep things fun and interesting. Everybody tends to have an overly ambitious TBR, and I have done this every year in the past. One of my favorite things about the Victober TBR videos is watching people trying to fit books that they really wanted to read anyway for Victober into the challenge, so they kind of cram it and they make it fit and they justify why, and you can tell that it was just kind of an intended read anyway. And I'm going to do this as well because there are some books that I've saved for this month anyway, so I'm going to try to make it fit. And that is going to happen for the very first challenge. All of the hosts and their challenges will be linked down below. For the first challenge, which is Kate Howe's challenge, is to read a Victorian book where religion is a component of the story. Arguably every Victorian book has elements of religion in them because it was a much more dominant part of everyday culture, and in some places in the world still is. So what I've decided to fit in for this one is Charlotte Bronte's The Foundling. This is a book that I recently acquired, and it's about a young man who has been adopted, like he's the foundling, and after his father passes, he finds out that he had been adopted, and we're taking on his life journey. Now, I am going to just try to fit this into this challenge under the premise that any act of kindness, no matter what it is highly encouraged by all religions worldwide. So this is my forced TBR. All I know is that this is part of Charlotte Bronte's Juvenilia, and it's before The Professor and before Jane Eyre. So I'm really curious as to how her writing started out. Roz's challenge is to experience Victorian drama, read, watch, or listen to a Victorian play. Now, because of the wording of this challenge, I think I found the perfect hybrid of all of this. I found on Audible a dramatization of Oscar Wilde's The Importance of Being Earnest. And I feel like with dramatizations, it's kind of like half of an audiobook or a reading and half of an experience, like a performance. And it's about 2 hours, so I think this will probably be the first thing I tackle so that I can check one thing off my list early Victober and feel good and pick up momentum. Katie's challenge is to read a Victorian book that plays with form in some way. Now, this challenge for me is gonna be followed up with a much bigger video and a plan. So I recently purchased a newly printed edition of Lady Beeton's book on household management. I also have a few like original Victorian copies of her works where I work at the Rare Book Library, and I made a little short about it. I am fascinated by her work and her rise to popularity, and she was kind of seen like the Martha Stewart or Nara Smith of her day, where she shared with people how to manage their household, but it was aimed at kind of middle upper class, not even middle class really, because the requirements for keeping a household like that in line included a lot of staff members, like a valet or a maid, or, you know, basically, like I joke in the short, is that you need the entire cast of Downton Abbey. And obviously when people visualize themselves in the past, they sometimes think that they would be the wealthy. Like, I don't know if people think that they would be Lord and Lady Grantham in Downton Abbey, but realistically, a lot of women worked historically all the time. People were maids and governesses. So I find this idea of just like women's labor in the past, but also advertising from upper class women of things to do with household management so fascinating. So I'm going to read this book, and I'm going to try some recipes. I want to see if I can make a Victorian dish, and I'm going to read about her. So I'm planning to make a pretty decent longer video on Lady Beeton. She is fascinating to me, so there's gonna be a lot around that. So it's not gonna be just a cookbook that I read, even though that plays with form in some way because it's a recipe book. but I'm gonna kind of uphold it with some nonfiction and some experiments, and I think it's gonna be a lot of fun. Marissa's challenge is to read a Victorian book that has been serialized. As you know, I am fascinated by nautical horror, or the Victorian Gothic nautical, and the choice I've made for this is a book that has been serialized by Captain Frederick Marryat. So this was serialized in the New Monthly magazine beginning in March of 1837 and ending in August of 1839. Marryat was a Royal Navy officer and a novelist, and he's famously known for The Children of the New Forest. But this book, which is absolutely fascinating, and like the cover is just drawing you in, is nautical, supernatural elements sprinkled in tale of the Flying Dutchman. I don't know when the second Pirates of the Caribbean movie came out, if I was in elementary school or high school, but when I watched the Flying Dutchman just come out of the water, I think I had an awakening. Like, I can only describe it as that. I've loved the concept of a ghost ship so much, especially the Flying Dutchman and all of the lore around it. This idea of the nautical horror ship story just fascinates me. I even built my own model of the Flying Dutchman, and I am prepared to love this. I'm prepared to really, really cherish this. But you know, in case I don't like it and I do have to DNF it, I have a backup, which is to just go back to Treasure Island, because this was also serialized. Among the last challenges of this Victober is a nod and an honoring of two booktubers who have passed away, whose favorite books were either by Wilkie Collins or Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, and we get to choose if we would like to read one or the other. I've recently found this original illustrated Arthur Conan Doyle in a free library, and I think that's my cue to return to some Sherlock Holmes. Maybe The Hound of the Baskerville, but I might also consider just starting with the first one, with A Study in Scarlet. And a weird connection between all this is that A Study in Scarlet was printed for Christmas as a Beeton special. So Isabel Beeton's husband was a publisher, and he published her works, but he also published the very first Sherlock Holmes before it went to a different publisher. So I find that connecting piece kind of interesting too. I would definitely like to participate in some spooky season things as well, and read some spookier, more contemporary things that have to do more with Halloween or spooky season. So we'll see how that fits in. But so far I've tried to pick kind of Victorian Gothic. And the last thing I'm gonna try to fit in here, if possible, is Irish ghost stories. I got this in Dublin when I went to Worldcon in 2019. And it includes people like Sheridan Le Fanu and Bram Stoker and some other Irish Victorian authors, and they're all Gothic tales, very spooky, it sounds at least. Plus, on the cover we have this spooky cemetery. I'd like to read some of these. I don't know if I'm going to read it cover to cover, but I'd like to dive a little bit into some of these. The last thing I'll mention is that there is also a book which will be read by the group together. So if you'd like some motivation to read this book, please join the reading group on Goodreads, and there's a lot of people there already, so check it out if you'd like to join that challenge. So thank you all very much for watching. I wish you all a very happy Victober, and I will see you in a future video. Bye!